Chapter 4. The Talk. John. After leaving Claudia's bedroom, I stood in the foyer with Michael. Mr. Claypool had left for the night. "What's on your mind, Michael?" I asked as we stood in the quiet house. I glanced up the steps that led to the second floor towards Claudia's bedroom. I wanted to be there with her. I could sense her stir. "John," she called to me. It was tearing me apart to be so close to her and not be by her side. "I can feel you're still here. I don't want to fall asleep without you. I want you near me." I bit my lips. Her mouth found my thoughts. She kissed me. It felt so real, her rich and full lips against mine, pressing hard. The wetness of her tongue, the scent of her skin, her fingertips touching my cheek and running through the locks of my hair. I took a quick breath, lost in the caress of her gentle fingers stroking my face, racing wickedly on my neck and down my chest. She pushed back at my shirt, making me blush. She had me pinned down on her bed. She was on top of me. I reached for her, bringing her down on top of me, and drank of her rich lips. I kissed her like a madman. God, I couldn't get enough of her. She made me weak. I was lost in her arms and the softness of her delicate form on top of me. "Miss Bell, you're being naughty with me. But don't stop," I encouraged. Mentally, I flipped our positions. It was my turn to pin her under me. She was delighted. An image of her smile merged into my head. "You're blushing, Mr. Slater." "I am more than blushing, Miss Bell," I replied. It was her turn to feel the heat and something else rising between us. "Now you're blushing," I said. She encouraged me, pressing my body onto hers. "Claudia." I exhaled her name in this fantasy world we'd created. "I need you." "Come get me," she taunted. An image of her face lying on her bed, looking up, mocked me. Sweat drenched my brow when a flash of my fantasy merged with the image. She was doing this. At one point, I came over to her, and she reached up to touch my naked chest. She ran her fingertips on each dent of my abs. I pushed back against the image she created, embarrassed, looking over at Michael, who was glancing over at me. "You okay?" I blushed and wiped at my brow. "Is it hot in here?" I asked. Michael said nothing. "Come on, let's go have a seat in the kitchen. I don't want to make any noise standing out here," Michael said. He walked into the kitchen. I followed, fanning my body with the collar of my shirt. As we entered, he grabbed a glass from the cabinet and poured himself a glass of water. "Can I get you something to drink?" I shook my head, wiping at my brow. As he walked to the table, I took a seat at the kitchen nook. Michael looked exhausted as we sat there. He was beside himself, unable to comprehend what Claudia was going through. I wanted to tell him so much more, but Claudia had begged me to keep it quiet. I didn't want to frighten Michael any more than he was already. I told Neil I would protect her. I promised him I would never let anything happen to her. Now look at me. I don't know what I'm doing," he confessed. "That's not true. You're doing all you can, sir. You're keeping your promise. These are forces we don't understand. Let's face it, Claudia is not an ordinary girl. You have your hands full." Michael smiled in agreement. "So glad you understand all this, John. I don't think I understand it myself, and I've seen it and lived it. I'm way over my head, it seems. I was hoping you would be the answer to all this." He gazed at me. I felt guilty. "But now, if you leave, I'm not sure what will happen to her. Claudia really likes you. And, well, I hate to deny it, you've grown on me too." "I appreciate that, sir. I'm sorry," I began. Michael shook his head. "I didn't want to say anything because I didn't know how to tell her," I said. Did I want to keep the lie going? Michael was pouring out his heart. He glanced over at me and patted my shoulder with a grin on his face. It seemed easy for him to accept. It was having to tell Claudia the truth he couldn't bear. Don't be. I can certainly understand. I can't expect you or anyone to give me the answers I need to help Claudia. Besides, it looks like you have your own hands full with your father. I can see why you live with your uncle. I chuckled when he said that. I'm sorry, that was rude. No, you're right, I said. He's never been the same since my mother died. God, just BS. Why was I saying this to him? Did I honestly want to make Dr. Nicholson sound like a poor widower who was never the same after his poor beloved wife had passed? Cover, I reminded myself. This was our cover. I sighed and stared over at Michael. Sir. Michael looked over at me. His eyes were lost, filled with confusion and distress. Can I be totally honest with you? I asked. The lines on his face eased and softened. Sure, John. Do you have some ideas on how to help Claudia? I'm all ears. It's not that, sir. He looked curiously at me. It's about what my father said. About me leaving. Yes? I'm not leaving because I want to, sir. You understand that. John, it's all right. I know you're a good person, and that there are things you can't stop from happening. I know you must do things you don't want to do. Sir, please, may I finish? Michael nodded, tucking his lip back. My father lied to you. I had no idea what he planned. I just came out and said it. I rose. I couldn't believe I was defying Dr. Nicholson, but he had gone far enough. He would never understand what I felt for Claudia. Shit, did that man even love anyone? I wanted to be with Claudia, and I was going to do anything I could to make it happen. Joseph's plan to kill me off was sounding far more inviting. After Claudia's request to leave Milton, to leave all this behind, I saw no reason not to just do that. Just the two of us. I had saved up. We could do this together. I'm not going to make excuses for him anymore. He thinks everything distracts me. I can't have anyone in my life. That's why we move a lot. The minute he sees me happy, he wants to take that away from me. It wasn't far from the truth. Dr. Nicholson wanted to take everything away from me, and if he saw me happy, it angered him far more. I had observed him at the restaurant, as he searched through the texts on my phone. I saw the manner in which he calculatingly disconnected her call so she couldn't reach out. Was it my lack of attention for him making him jealous? If I wasn't his 100%, he was there to make my life a living hell, just like he was doing now. He doesn't want anyone to get close to me, and I'm tired of it, I said. I hope that I'm not being so bold in saying this, sir, but I see you as someone I can be truthful with. Michael smiled. I had rewarded him with that statement, and yet I felt so guilty I wasn't telling him everything. John, I'm happy you're honest with me. I can't imagine what you have to deal with each moment of your life with a man like that being your father. That sounds so sad. He exhaled. It wasn't meant to sound sad, sir. He doesn't deserve anyone's sympathy, trust me. The way he treated you this evening was unacceptable, and I want to apologize for that. I was embarrassed. I'm happy Claudia wasn't there to go through what you had to. He seemed to agree about that. John, I might not know your father as well as you, but I'm sure there's something in him that cares about you enough to want the best for you. He wasn't getting it. And I'm sure he's been through a lot with your mother's death, and his mother's as well. I'm sure if you look, you'll find the pain in what actions he displays. Michael meant well, but he would never see the big picture as long as he didn't know the entire truth. He was trying to make this man human, and Dr. Nicholson wasn't. Dr. Nicholson had no empathy. Not one he had ever displayed for another. He was doing everything to take what was more important in my life. I mean, who wouldn't want the best for his child? Michael questioned. Without trying, I had painted Dr. Nicholson in a better light. He was a grieving widower who just wanted the best for his spoiled son. Well, I'm not going anywhere. I'm 18 and I want to stay, I voiced proudly. Michael looked more concerned than relieved at my announcement. If he wants to cut me out of the inheritance, that's fine with me. I am in love. I'm in love with Claudia. There was a small silence between us. "John, you're young. Make sure you're doing it for all the right reasons." I wrinkled my nose at him. Adults were always saying those things, but in Michael's case, he didn't know half of what was going on in this picture. It wasn't the same. "You have your whole life ahead of you, and I don't want you to lose out on any opportunities. Make sure you talk to Claudia about it before you make any further decisions. I know she wouldn't want you to make any irrational decisions that would impact your future because of her." Michael did not understand. She wanted us to leave, and I was ready to pack my things up and take her away with me. As long as Michael was in the dark, he would disagree. He didn't know that the same man he thought was my father was the same man that would take his adopted daughter and perform hideous experiments on her for his own agenda. Michael rose and put his hand on my shoulder. "I just want you to think about it before you do anything, son." I tucked in my lip. I knew what I wanted. "Just talk to her before you make any decision that will impact the both of you," Michael said, patting my shoulder. After our talk, Michael dismissed himself to bed, and I left. It was a school night, after all, and it was late. Outside, I looked into the window of Claudia's bedroom. "Claudia," I called. There was silence. I searched for her. The current was there, but it was silent. Without her, I couldn't navigate, so there was no way of knowing if she was already asleep. The only way to know if she was okay was to climb. Without her, I couldn't see. I couldn't materialize a mental presence. The ghostly kiss and passion we shared had left me wanting more, and I was determined to seek her out. I climbed the side of the tree. It wasn't hard for someone with my skill to spring up and grab the large branch. I pulled myself onto the branch and over to her window. It was still open. I looked in. Claudia was lying on her bed. She appeared peacefully laying on her side. Her hip and side moved up and down slowly. "Claudia," I whispered softly. She didn't move. My body lying beside her would surely wake her up. I grinned. My phone rang at that moment. I nearly lost my balance reaching to silence it. I lifted it and switched the ringer off. I was about to put it back into my pocket when it buzzed again. It was a text from Joseph. "Pick up. We must talk." I quickly texted back, "I'm busy." Joseph, "Busy my ass. This is important." He texted me again. Me, "Not now, Joseph." Joseph, "Get off the oak tree, John, and come down. Now." I wrinkled my nose and looked down the street. I spotted his Mercedes SUV parked along the side street. Shit. I looked back into Claudia's bedroom, longing to be by her side. She stirred, then raised her head, catching sight of me outside her window. Our eyes met. "John," her mind said. I looked back toward the street. Joseph was now standing outside his car. "John," I heard her again before jumping off the tree. I landed on the grass and walked towards Joseph. From behind, I could sense her. "John, don't go. Please? John?" Her hand touched me. Her lips brushed the side of my face. I held back. Joseph's eyes met mine. He looked upset. I didn't want her to worry. "I'm sorry, Claudia." "We have to go, champ. Now," he said sternly. I didn't know what else to say. Joseph climbed into his Mercedes. He lowered the window of the automobile. "What's so fucking important?" I growled as sweat dripped down off my brow. "You know what, hot shot." He narrowed his eyes over at me. "Dr. Nicholson." I guessed correctly. "Yeah, I know." "I'm sorry, Claudia. I have to go. It's... John? I'll explain later. It's... John? Is it?" "Yes." I grabbed at the watch and shut Claudia's voice out of my head. It hurt too much. There was more news, and I could see it in Joseph's eyes. "I know you like that girl." John. But right now, we have a job to do, and she can't come in between that. Or what? I snarled. Joseph glared over at me. You're gonna get her killed. You understand that? It wasn't what he said that got me. It's the way he said it. What do you mean? What happened? What did you discuss? And don't play innocent, Joseph. You weren't very forthcoming with me about your plans to report me to Dr. Nicholson. Don't think I've forgotten or forgiven that. I thought we had each other's backs. Yeah, well, I thought the same about you, John. I do what I do for you, and only you. Don't forget that. You still have a lot to learn, kid. Spending time with Miss Bell is fucking up your game as a hunter. Remember that? He snarled back at me. What's that supposed to mean? What do you think? Get into your car and meet me back at the rental. I caught him looking up toward Claudia's window. You want to protect her? You need to start listening to me. If you love her, you'll do what I ask of you. What the fuck does that mean, Joseph? It means you got Dr. Nicholson's attention in the wrong way. What are you talking about? I asked, nearing the open window of his car. We'll talk about it at the rental. This is not the place. His car pulled away from the side of the street. Once he was in the middle of the street, he stopped his vehicle. When I moved towards my car and jumped in, he sped off. I reluctantly followed, glancing back at Claudia's window. I caught sight of her figure looking out. Claudia, I'm sorry, I said, knowing she couldn't hear me at such a distance. I could only hope she felt me. I sped off. I arrived at the rental quickly, but Joseph was already there when I came in through the garage entrance. He was seated at the kitchen island on one of those stools that decorated the place. I looked out over the back deck. The pool looked refreshing, and I wondered why I had never thought of inviting Claudia to my place. Even now, you can't get her out of your head. I glanced over at him as he cut an apple. You told him I was distracted? Not cool. I didn't have to. You made a great spectacle of yourself all on your own. Really, John? Pulling out your phone and chatting while at dinner with the boss? Are you an idiot? You think that was a smart thing to do? You think he wouldn't notice? What has she done to you? To your head? I was playing the arrogant teenager to the T, like he wants. And watch your mouth. Don't you dare say anything bad about her. She's different. Yeah, of that I'm aware. And afraid. How is she affecting you? This connection is going to get the attention of the boss. In fact, it already has, partially. I furrowed a brow. Just what did that mean? It doesn't help when you're telling him I'm distracted either, Joseph. I didn't have to. You're not listening to me, John. You did that on your own. By pulling out your phone and texting your girlfriend on a dinner meeting? The fact that Michael had no idea had nothing to do with why we were there. You know how Dr. Nicholson likes to perform his checks. Joseph was right. It was kind of sloppy on my part. Just tell me when, I angrily said, standing at the other end of the island. I knew what was coming. My palms were sweaty. I was ready to engage in a fight. My adrenaline was pumping. I switched the watch slightly so Claudia wouldn't feel my rage. If she could feel me at dinner, I was sure she could feel my agony now if I allowed it. I got him to agree to letting you attend prom and graduation. Well, that was really nice of you. John, I'm looking out for you. I thought it would be nice if you could still go with this young lady. She did save my life. I think I owe her something. Yeah, sounds like guilt to me. I laughed at that. Joseph gave me a frown. So then what? Be honest. What happens next? I'm not just getting a lengthy lecture from the good doctor, am I? I'm always honest with you, John. It's in my blood as a guardian. So? I pressed. He wants you back in training, back in confinement. You'll get the adrenaline dose and... I moved away, running a hand over the top of my head. I'm not going back there. I'm not getting that damn shot again. No! I shouted at him as I neared the island. No, I don't want to forget her. I won't. I'm not doing it. I swore as I paced. John, listen to me. I turned and stared back at him. You don't know what it's like, Joseph. I snarled at him. Yeah, I do, he patiently said. No, you don't. You think you do, but you don't. It's empty. I'm this thing with no feelings. I don't want to be that again. I have so much with her, and I don't want to lose that. Claudia gave me something I never knew was out there. I'm not losing it. That injection is going to make me his puppet again, and I don't want it. I'll be in hibernation for a month, his prisoner. Then I'll wake up to nothing again. I don't want to forget her. I love her too much. I dropped onto a stool. I thought of the coldness I felt at the beginning. It's cold. The first time I awoke, it seemed so normal because I didn't know anything to compare it with. Until Claudia. Our connection is growing and I'm getting stronger. She's making me stronger. Together, we're complete. I feel more than I have ever felt. I'm not doing that shit again, ever. I'm not giving up what I feel for her and what she's given me. I had him agree to 2 weeks. I glance over. I doubt it. Did he really think it made a difference how long? He didn't get it. 2 weeks? No, he's a liar. You know it, Joseph. I rose and leaned forward, narrowing my face over at him from the other end of the counter. John, calm down. I'm not going back. I'm done, Joseph. I'm not going into that confinement. I snarled, pushing forward. I felt my eyes dancing like they did with Miss Bell, but it felt different. Joseph gave me a peculiar look. John, take a breath, he softly said. Easy now. My veins were on fire. I felt my eyes burning. The rage in me was pouring from every pore in my body. My heart was hitting the top of my head. I looked down at my hands. My fingernails had dug into the granite of the island. I had felt nothing. The damage was on the surface of the counter. Easy. Joseph continued to soothe me. I took a deep breath. Little by little, I gathered myself, and the feeling faded. I felt more like my former self. You okay, champ? I moved back, taking my hands off the granite. Joseph's eyes dropped and glared at the counter. He ran a finger over the surface. He was speechless for a moment. I'm not going back, I said in a stern tone. And not you or Dr. Nicholson can make me. Joseph pressed his lip. We'll talk about it. There's nothing more to talk about, Joseph. I'm done. There's still my option, John. I glared at him, not sure what he meant. What are you talking about? What option? Your death, champ, Joseph said sadly. Trust me, John. I want the best for you. He patted my shoulder. I'm not going back in confinement, I repeated. Joseph nodded. I wanted to trust him, because he was my friend, and like Claudia had once clarified, we were family. But now I had Claudia, and that's all I needed. We'll talk about it, but Miss Bell needs to be here too, he said. Actually, I think I have a better idea. But you have to trust me, John. What? I pressed. I can't say any more. Joseph. I stared over at him quizzically. John, I said you have to trust me. You're not going back into confinement. I promise. I exhaled, staring back at him. Okay, Joseph. I trust you.